because you asked for him, and also because I needed content. Actually, have Larry Goldberg back here today because Larry has some very strong opinions about whether Tesla should get into lithium mining, and also some strong opinions and some strong feedback for us over part one of the Limiting Factors Lithium report. And I think if you haven't listened to the Lithium report yet, if you haven't listened to part one, if you're not one of his Patreons, you should be. And now you could listen to the entire thing if you wanted to. But in any case, at Tesla Larry is where you'll find Larry when he's not on this show. And you need to follow him on Twitter because he's always coming up with stuff that gets all kinds of attention. So Larry, great to have you back.
Great to be here, and I have to say that Jordan Giesiker, the Limiting Factor, it's Jordan's YouTube channel, has the best content of all the Tesla content guys out there. Now, he focuses purely on batteries, or mainly, largely on batteries, but he is truly a subject matter expert. He's also just one hell of a nice guy. I mean, I have a huge respect for him, but I really like him and met him several times at several of the events. And he is just such a fountain of knowledge and such a good guy with it. So I think that every Tesla investor should be, a subscriber to his channel. So that's it. I want to talk about this latest video of his, the full version of which you really need to be a subscriber to see, and which I'm going to raise some. I'm going to raise some opposite perspectives from those that he gives, but I want to respect his material, and so I'll talk in general terms and not specific terms that he talks about. I'm going to talk about his thesis in general. But I do want to share one slide, which is on his part one, which is an open YouTube, and it's open on his Twitter feed. You can look at the part one. It contains some of the thesis of what he presents, and it contains sort of some of the background material.
If you like having Larry on the show, please hit like, hit subscribe, hit notify, and of course, follow Larry on Twitter at Tesla Larry, and follow me as well. And then hit up my Patreon. Good stuff going up there, even some original stuff now. So, okay, Larry, you've got a beautiful slide now of your backyard, I assume?
Yeah, it's my backyard.
Oh, man.
Yes, this is the key slide. And it needs a little bit of explanation. I don't want to go into the gory details. For that, please go and listen to Jordan. But the essence of it is that you'll see the demand. These bars here are all the demand. I'm sorry, they're all the supply. The demand is this blue line here is what he calls the base case demand.
Okay.
And this assumes the growth of battery demand based upon principally transport, based upon the sort of projection of all vehicles expected over the period of time.
Okay.
And then he's got a high case demand. Tesla's talking about 3 terawatts by 2030, and you'll see that's really the 3 terawatt mark right there.
That big burgundy line.
This line here, no, that would be the high. 2030 here is 3 terawatts, but that would just be Tesla.
I see.
So
right.
If Tesla's 100% of the market, that's the base case.
Okay.
But in fact, we expect it to be, the sort of high case demand is if Tesla's 50% of the market and gets 3 terawatts. That's kind of the rough thing, but Jordan lays it out very carefully. But what you see in these bars are actually what they believe, and they is benchmark, which is one of the analysts in the community that focuses on lithium and is an expert in lithium, and they really know what they're talking about. They talk about it and they detail it in very great detail. And so what you see is, what's already operating, what those operators can expand to, and then beyond that, the highly probable, the probable, and then the possible. And you'll see that roughly in 2028, maybe even a little earlier, the base case demand starts parting from the available, what we see available.
Right.
And really the high level demand is already passed. And we're already, if you believe in this, this really high case demand, you can see that we're already short lithium in the marketplace.
Right.
And what's good about Jordan's whole thesis is that he goes into very great detail about both the supply and demand. And the demand is based upon principally, building the case from Tesla's battery day and subsequent presentations. So he takes the Tesla perspective, but it's the best perspective we have in the marketplace. He adds GM and Ford's announcements and what we've heard from the other battery and EV manufacturers, and he kind of works that in. And so he has a different demand curve from that of benchmarks, but he has this high case demand, and he has this sort of the original demand curve that was postulated back in Q1 of 2020, and that's the dotted line. And even that line, you'll see we part in 2030 to 2033. So if Tesla's going to make the numbers, we really need lithium production to reach these red lines as soon as possible. That's really the bottom line to it, and it looks improbable.
So, okay, Larry, so we're basically looking at a situation where, according to benchmark, and I don't know enough about benchmark to have an opinion as to how accurate they are. I know a lot of times some of these things I've seen from various agencies tend to be pessimistic.
Yep.
And then when you look at it 2 years later, it's like, how did they ever come to those numbers? There's way more than everybody thought. I know that I asked Jordan a couple of months ago, no, like 4 or 5 months ago, it was beginning to look to me like we had plenty of lithium through 2030, through 2027, that Tesla would not have a problem, that the overall economy wouldn't have a problem until 2027, 2028. And he said, yeah, he was working on it. But it looks to me like he's come to that conclusion also, roughly.
No. He's definitely come to the conclusion that there will not be sufficient, that until 2027 we could make the base case, but we're not going to make the high case demand. And really Tesla is shooting for the high case demand if it's going to hit 100% growth, 50% growth a year.
I see.
So I would modify what he said. And the too long didn't read about it is that if Tesla wants to get the 2030 target that it set, if it wants to get the 50% growth that it set, it really needs to get into mining as much as it needs to get into refining, more than it needs to get into refining. That's the bottom line he's trying to make. And I think that if you were to talk to him today that he's got this out, he would be more defensive on that issue, and he would say, no, we really, 2027, it means that we have to get like 65% of all the lithium mined. And, that's going to be a tough call. Although that may be possible, it's still going to be a tough call.
Gotcha. All right. So
we're in a much tighter position than we thought, is what he is saying.
Okay. And then I know that we have the coming sulfur revolution, and I know that's in a later segment that I haven't seen yet.
Yeah.
Can sulfur, in your opinion,
sodium.
I'm sorry, sodium. And in your opinion, without giving away his stuff that is still under wraps at Patreon, What do you think? Will sodium be a major player in time to make up some of this?
Sodium would not make up the base case. Sodium will become a major player. By 2030, it's going to be a significant factor.
Okay.
It may make up part of, if not, a substantial portion of the base case, but nowhere near will it make the high case demand, and even the base case is subject to question.
So let me stop you there.
Yeah.
If we could create enough lithium and enough sulfur and refine it.
Sodium.
I'm sorry, I keep saying it. Enough. That's why I didn't stay in chemistry. So if there was enough available refined materials, could we have enough battery manufacturing capacity by that time?
That's not really a subject of the study, and I would hesitate to say yes or no. Yeah. All I know is that what Jordan does teach us, I knew this, I've known this for a long time, is that mining has a much, much, much longer lead time than manufacturing.
Right.
So in general terms, that problem, the problems of growing the battery supply, is a much smaller problem and a much more tractable problem than growing the mineral supply.
Got it.
And for all those reasons, Jordan is saying, Elon says that we need to get into refining, and that's the problem today. But Jordan is saying, no, Elon, you're either trying to fool the market and for whatever reason, or you're missing the point that mining is the big shortcoming. Now, I have some specific criticisms for Jordan on some of his numbers and some of his theses. None of them would remove this what looks like intractable problem, but they would modify somewhat his findings. I go back a long way in mining. When I was a young man, my business was growing very rapidly, and I stumbled into the coal mine business. Mm. I want to go into the gory details because it's a terrible tragedy. Look, in mining, if you want to make a big fortune, you need to start with a massive fortune. If you want to make a small fortune, you want to start with a big fortune. If you start with a small fortune, you will go bankrupt. I mean, that is just the simple fact of mining. Mining, there is a reason why there's, basically 7 mining companies in the whole world. There's a very good reason for it. Because mining a single mineral is an extraordinarily dangerous practice. Mining even 2 different minerals for the same use case is as dangerous a practice. Mining a range of minerals with a portfolio of mining skills and practices, and with global, spread of your investment, is risky business.
Yeah.
But it's the only business that makes money in mining. Now, there are some companies you can point out, oh, this mining company does very well and has done well for the last 10 years. Yeah, it's probably 5 years away from bankruptcy.
So, Larry, let me stop you again, because, as I've been, watching this, and I tend to be, as optimistic as I am, I tend to be a little skeptical at all the people that say, boy, we've got this new way, this new method, and it'll be on stream and it'll work really good. But I have noticed that when it comes to lithium mining, there are quite a few new approaches that are being, put, not even that new in some cases, like, for instance, brine. And some of these
brine is not new. Brine's probably one of the oldest. Yeah.
But I'm saying, but a lot more, what do you want to call it? Directed energy towards the brine extraction.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be faster to get approval, right?
Let me stipulate.
Okay.
There is a lot of opportunity to improve the mining and extraction of lithium.
Okay.
Let me stipulate that. And Tesla's betting on improving the refining of lithium. And Jordan points out why that's good. That's a very important thing, but that's not sufficient. And it is very important to stimulate mining of lithium. And without that, Tesla's going to come short. The market's going to come short. The entire industry of EV powered cars are going to come short, and Tesla's going to be the biggest victim of that. And Jordan's right. And if you look at his numbers, I mean, he goes into it in exquisite detail. That is important because it shows you the material aspects of it. He looks at every one of the methods, every one of the promising areas, and he shows you why it's difficult. And he also goes into the geographic risks. What he doesn't touch on is what happens forever. I come from South Africa, and South Africa was fully dependent on gold mines. It was like 80% of our exports. It was 60% of our economy. Wow. And I remember in the 60s when gold shot up to 800, there was enormous excitement in the country. And it was like there was, the good times were rolling and it was never going to end. And we said, or it was said, that gold will hit 3,000 within 10 years because there's no more gold left. The mines are running out. Only places come from in South Africa. Everywhere else, blah, 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 and nothing happened. Gold drifted down and down and down, and in real terms has never hit that number again.
Right.
Why? Because the minerals are there. We just don't know where they are. And I think one of the biggest weaknesses, potential weaknesses of this paper is this lack of realization that there is an enormous amount of lithium in the ground.
Right.
And in the waters and in multiple different ways.
Right.
We just haven't come across, the richest vein of them, the best possibility of them. Now, it takes a lot of time and money and effort to get it out of the ground. But the question is, what does Tesla bring that a mining consortium or a miner of lithium doesn't already have?
I would think the biggest thing would be capital.
Capital is cheap. Well, it used to be cheap. Look, whatever capital Tesla brings to the market could be replaced at even lower prices simply with the Tesla signature to the contract.
Well, that's kind of what I mean. So then the next level is the next thing they would bring to the table is a guaranteed customer.
Yeah. And that's the power that Tesla has. I don't see Tesla bringing any value add to the mining company that it couldn't bring anyway without an equity investment.
Uh-huh.
And an equity investment unhedged by other geographies and other minerals and the balance sheet of a mining company with the risks and rewards attached to it that is correctly geared to and related to the mining activity.
Yeah.
And the Tesla balance sheet and the Tesla focus and the Tesla engineering skills and everything that is, and software skills, everything that is Tesla is none of that mining activity. And so that's the reason why I say Tesla's power is that it is functionally the market.
Yeah.
And it could bring with it the power of the market capability. That's the value that Tesla can bring. Why it has to be in the mining business, Makes no sense at all. Because the mining business has a profile of risk and a profile of reward and a profile of, time to everything related to the mining business is antithetical to Tesla's entire mission.
Right.
Now, Tesla can definitely bring huge value to the miner and has already,
yes,
in many ways. As we know, with Piedmont Minerals or whatever the company's called, they've added value to that company by, guaranteeing takeoff. They could do that to any mine with a new discovery. The one thing Jordan didn't touch on, and I'll give away this little secret, is exploration.
Uh-huh.
He talks about exploration in a narrow sense, and that is, existing mining companies exploring, extending their mines. But when you have a mineral that's doing this, exploration does this. There's a lag, and there's a lag between the time exploration hits the discovery and the minerals come out, depending on where it's coming from.
Right.
To take a bet on one mining company when you've got 10 mining companies, or 7 major ones, and I don't know, umpteen other explorers out there looking for that big hit is crazy. You want to spread right across the world, and you want to spread across every level of explorer out there, because the big companies don't do the exploration all themselves. They look at the explorers out there, and then they factor that up and up and up. They contract that up and up and up until they actually do the final exploration pieces themselves. It's a long story. I don't want to get into it, but believe me, Tesla doesn't want to be in mining.
So Larry, I'm an outsider, and sometimes we outsiders can come up with stuff that the people inside never do. And I'm not claiming that this is true of me right now, only that as I looked at all of the different examples of where the work is being done, and you think about, technologies that happen to be coming on at the same time and maybe not being thought of. The one that really impressed me the most was the idea of combining desalination with the extraction of the lithium from the same salt water.
Not going to happen in the timescales we're looking at. It's just not going to happen. The Jordan talks about it, but I'm not to give away any secrets that the concentration of lithium in the sea is so low that the energy required to extract it would far exceed the value of the lithium at current rates of energy, and even at free cost of energy, it wouldn't necessarily be a winning game. Now, it's possible, when you get these kinds of equations, the gap can close, the equation can close, and that's more than possible.
Yeah.
But we're not talking about something that's going to happen in 5 years, or if you look at the gap on the slide, that gap, we're looking at a gap in 2027, opening up in 2028. That's 3-4 years time. We're talking about a development. Look, any mining is going to take 3 to 5 years to develop, and in the industrial world, in the developed world, 7 to 10 years
because of the permitting
and
lawsuits
and politics and all the usual suspects. And so you've got to go to the third world, the second world, or the third world, or the fourth world. And in those worlds, there's all kinds of risks that mining companies know how to deal with, and the best mining companies deal with them best. The worst mining companies, they skirt the rules, they do all kinds of things, and then there's enormous risk involved. The best mining companies know how to do it. I learned the hard way. It's a long story, and I'm not going to get into it. But I learned the hard way that in South Africa, the best mining company is Anglo American, and they're the right guys to do the mining.
I see. Yeah.
At least it was at that time. So, it is a really, really tough business. I don't mean physically tough, although it is. It is a really, really difficult business to balance risk, reward, engineering, and cost of money, and all of those things. Trying to put them together without a balanced portfolio is extraordinarily difficult. And by the way, even the biggest mine companies go bankrupt with astounding regularity.
Well, again, you're looking at the commodities market. There's no market that's more difficult. I've never invested a dime. Now that's not true. I used to buy plastic by the trainload.
Yeah.
So that's investing in the commodity market.
Yes.
But still, I've never invested in the so-called market because it's a crazy market. It's so hard to predict, and everybody will tell you that is stay away from commodities unless you're really going to focus all of your attention on commodities, and even then you're probably in trouble. So now you're talking about doing it as a business where all it takes is one significant find, or one significant change in the way that chemical is used, because some other chemical is able to take its place. Or a change in the market in terms of the overall economy that you're not expecting. I mean, there's just so many things that can go wrong.
And I will ask Jordan for an opportunity for a debate with him on some specific points where I feel he may want to revisit, where I could bring some knowledge and some expertise, which is not in the mining side, by the way. And not on the chemical side or the battery side, but definitely on areas that we could mitigate some of this risk, some of this serious risk. But I have to say that it is fantastic to be able to have this resource and to be schooled this way. I mean, he is just amazing. Anybody who's prepared to delve into this detail, it's just amazing. Now,
he's doing it at risk.
Yes.
He's basically hoping that folks will join Patreon. He doesn't have a regular income from this. He's not counting on Amazon advertising income. He doesn't have sponsors for the shows. I mean, he's not doing anything other than hoping that people will sign up for Patreon and hoping that that'll be enough to cover his nut.
Yeah. So he's just done a great job.
Well, if he says he'll debate you, I would certainly love to have that debate on my channel.
I wouldn't want to debate him. I would like to ask him about some of these points and just clarify and get his view on my views and some of my objections to some very limited points. In general, the thesis that we don't have enough lithium and the timescales to get enough lithium are very, very risky, and that this, high case demand is at risk, if not extreme risk. So even to get the blue line we're at risk. To get beyond the blue line, which we'll have to get, to meet Tesla's optimistic base case is going to be, tricky. It would be great to hear from Tesla what their plans are, but I suspect they're not telling.
So I'm going to put my thing on the table right now, based on a statement that Elon made, and I'm going to say this is what I think should happen in addition, not instead of, but in addition to everything else. The state of California should come behind this entire thing, and they should say, we will guarantee this much money for desalinated water. No matter what the season is, if we have a great season, lots and lots of rain, we will still pay this much money per year to have these desalination capabilities available. That would be one part of the equation. I know that you can mine more than just more than just lithium out of the brine. There's other things you can mine out of that. So there's got to be a number that would be satisfactory. So there may be a point at which that technology, and Elon says that with solar power, you reduce almost all of the cost of the desalination down to 2 cents. I think he said
Right.
1,000 cubic feet, something
But
like that.
Randy, are you confusing two issues?
Okay, all right.
Desalinization is one issue,
Mhm.
an important issue, by the way, a very important issue. Israel does it on a gigantic basis for their base economy,
Right.
and for the economy, by the way, of the countries around it. So desalinization is one issue, but it has nothing to do with lithium.
But you have the brine, right?
The brine that you get from the sea
Mm-hmm.
is not lithium rich. The brine that you get from the inland sea in
Right.
California,
Salt Lake, etc. Mm-hmm.
that is, lithium rich. Jordan didn't go into that as a source, so I'm assuming that it isn't, very large quantities. If it can be mined in very large quantities, and I think there is another car company that has pursued that, that may change these numbers. He didn't mention that. I'd be interested to know those numbers. What is that inland sea, the Salton Sea?
Salton Sea, the Great Salt Lake, and there's at least a couple more of
Yeah,
these around the world.
I do know that the Salton Sea is rich in lithium, but not all inland lakes are rich in lithium.
What about the Dead Sea?
They've never mined lithium from the Dead Sea that I'm aware of, or not in any large quantities. They do other chemicals, but not lithium.
So there are at least two companies, by the way, Larry, that do believe that they have a solution for an economically feasible way to mine from salt water.
Mine lithium from salt water?
Yes, and one of them is actually Israeli, I think, if I remember correctly.
And that salt water being the sea?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. And
that's all very interesting. And the question is, what's the time scale on that? And it could be. I mean, I'm making a general statement from what I know. And what do I know? I mean, it's just no, seriously, it's just something I read in passing. So
I'm doing this as an outsider who's done some research, and I could be so far off, but at least I like to follow the dots and say, okay, where can this convergence come from? The convergence of almost free water from ocean water, which Elon has mentioned can be done. Then you have the convergence of that with maybe some new chemical processes that are better able to extract minerals from the brine that you get out of the salt water, which the brine is currently a waste issue. So instead of a waste issue, it becomes a mineable component. That convergence might be something that could really be a difference maker.
Yeah, my guess is that we're talking about 0.0018, I think, is the percentage of lithium in seawater. I may be wrong on the number of zeros, but it's a very, very low number.
Right.
I mean, seriously low number, which means that the amount that you have to, the amount of seawater you have to go through is gigantic. I mean, it means 100 kilos of water for a gram of lithium. Well, I don't know. Actually, a ton of water for a gram. Yeah. So who knows? But it'd be interesting to look at. We can have a drill down into it. My guess is that we're years and years away from it. There's nothing that I can see between now and 2027 when the gap opens.
Yeah. And
we're already in the gap if we take the high case. If we take the base case, the gap opens in 3 years. You're not going to mine lithium out of the sea in 3 years. So I can say with, hand on heart.
There you go. All right, Larry. Well, I think we've opened the subject matter. I'd love to hear the comments on this one. I want to encourage people to not only subscribe to Jordan's channel, but also The Limiting Factor is the name. Also to follow him on Twitter. I encourage you to spend $5 or $10 or $20 a month on his Patreon.
It's not even $5. It's very little money.
Well, okay, I'm sure there's a number. I'm sure he'll take whatever the Patreon amount could be.
Yeah.
But anyway, just want to encourage everybody to do that and to follow Larry at Tesla Larry, and to hit the like button if this was useful. And we will be seeing Larry again, if not before, on Saturday morning when he and I do the analysis of the week. We take a look at what happened during the week. Wait a minute, that is not Saturday morning. That is now Friday night. It's only been Saturday morning when it's Kathy Wood. So this week it will be Friday late afternoon when folks will be able to hear what Larry and I thought about the CPI and the PPI and all.
Oh, what a week it's going to be, right? What a week. Whoa.
Holy mackerel. All right, Larry, thanks for being on board.
Thank you.
All right. And to all of you out there, it's been great talking to you.
Click the link below to get your paperback, Kindle, or audiobook now.